Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is January 23rd, and right now we are looking at the mid-level water vapor loop. You can see our weak system coming across British Columbia. Some snow is flying with this. It's generally light. It will sag south across Washington, Idaho, and Montana, bring some light precipitation with it, but it's not a big weather maker here. What it is going to do, though, is bring another round of some cool offshore flow. Some nice sunny skies will continue as we go on in through this weekend and probably through the early portion of next week before finally some westerlies start to return and we get a pattern change here across Pacific Northwest. And you've probably been hearing some chatter about some Arctic air on the move through the extended forecast. Is it just another case of Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown to come and try to kick and she pulls it away last second? Well, we'll take a look at the most recent on that information here in a moment. Portland, Oregon, just showing you here that these cold weather advisories are something new the National Weather Service is doing. You wouldn't see it for these temperatures east of the mountains. This is just a relative temperature forecast. And I think this one actually is wrapping up here at 10 a.m. anyway, but just kind of showing you some of the new things the National Weather Service is doing. You can see better chances across the Idaho Panhandle, western Montana, maybe a couple showers of snow across the Cascades as we go through tonight and on in through Friday coming up, but should not be that big of a deal. Maybe a dusting for Snoqualmie Pass, better amounts across Montana, some locally higher amounts as you can see out there. It looks like Helena, right around 2 inches there, so not too bad. And watch out because, it doesn't take much to make things slick. So if you're heading eastbound across I-90, once you get towards Lookout Pass and off towards Missoula and whatnot, you're probably going to be running into a little bit more snowfall. So if you're traveling, heads up for that. Weather station battle, the Tempest, the one I highly recommend here. If you want to get one of these, click on that link to save 10% down below. 11 miles per hour. The Davis collected 10 miles per hour so far today. So I can't wait till we get some stronger winds so I can do some real comparisons. Now, if we take a look at what is going on now, you can see the snowfall kind of rapidly decreasing, maybe a couple showers north Cascades, and it keeps showing some kind of precipitation here on the north slope of the Olympic Mountains. The flow is going to turn northerly and may drop some precipitation as we go through tonight into tomorrow morning with that, and even shows a little bit of freezing precipitation, maybe a mix there right along the north slopes. But you can see some of this coming down across Idaho, Montana. It's not a lot, but again, locally, it could have some moderate impacts there. Then you see this modified Arctic front sag south of the Pacific Northwest and cut off low here for California. Very dry conditions here for the Pacific Northwest as we go through the upcoming weekend. Offshore flow, some nice sunny skies across the region here. And hopefully it's just windy enough to keep the dense fog from forming. But you'll see we remain dry probably all the way in through the mid portion of next week. Frontal system starts to arrive. The westerlies start to come in here. And you can see some systems moving into the west coast of North America. And then you can see the pressure gradient start to tighten there across Western Canada. Some Arctic air is up across British Columbia by this point. And the GFS is in large agreement with that. We'll look at the GFS here in a moment. But yeah, that could start to bring some interesting weather as we go through the early portion of February. And if you've lived here for a while, you know that Februaries can be snowy here, even for the lower elevations in the Pacific Northwest. So don't lose hope just yet. We'll continue to walk through it day by day. Now, taking a look here, I want to show you this. You can see the system kind of moving through. Look at the northerlies just blasting down across the region. We're really not getting any kind of cyclogenesis with this system. And then it brings that offshore flow, the cool conditions as we go through this weekend. Then we go on in towards Monday, still going offshore. I don't like that the winds are fairly light showing up here as we go through Monday. Hopefully you're not going to get any fog development with that, but the air should kind of be on the drier side. We'll see how that goes. We'll revisit that coming up. But you see, we have to scroll all the way out towards next Wednesday before we bring the next frontal system in there. So we'll be watching that one and the timing on that as well. And if I scroll through here on the simulated infrared satellite imagery, there goes that weak system. And as we go through, for example, Saturday, look at this. This is just ground temperature. This is just an infrared satellite imagery. It just usually does a better job at picking up the upper level clouds, the cool cloud tops, as you can see there. So you can see the diurnal and the nocturnal cycle. We go through Sunday morning. You can see the ground cool down there again. But you notice we don't have many clouds across the region here as we go through early next week. And then next frontal system finally arrives. Now, if we look at the upper levels of the jet stream here, what's going on is that it does resemble a La Nina pattern, but the ridge is just too close to the Pacific Northwest. Keeps shunting these systems off to the east, and that big Arctic air blast that did leak out some cooler air, it misses us to the east, and that's kind of been what's going on. The ridge is going to hang on all the way through next week. But what we're looking at here is there could be some mid-latitude cyclone development out here strong enough to finally put a kink in this jet stream and allow for some of this cooler air to move down across Western Canada, but the westerlies are going to try to start to phase in at the same time, so we got to watch that closely. Could bring some interesting weather though here. I'll show you what the latest GFS and the European show here on that in a moment. But this is just kind of a reminder that tropical convection and heat transfer across the planet is really the driver of the Rossby wave train configuration. And Rossby waves are just, troughs and ridges downstream. And if we scroll out here a little bit more, you can kind of see how the jet stream gets strong towards the end of the run. So maybe the westerlies will continue to bring an active pattern as we go in through February. But if we take a look here at the precipitable water across the tropics, again, this just kind of gives you a nice visual diagram of where all the water is, or the vast majority of it, in the heat. And so when the heat transfer again takes place, it makes troughs and ridges downstream. And we've been stuck in this ridgy pattern here due to some configuration of this tropical forcing. And a lot of times, this has been a weak La Nina, so it's not really playing like a normal La Nina here. And El Nino, of course, has a different configuration where more of this tropical convection moves out across Pacific Ocean and brings more of a warmer jet stream here to the west coast of North America. So just kind of showing you guys here the heat transfer across the planet. Okay, now let's look at some interesting stuff. GFS on the left, European on the right, 12Z run, hot off the presses. There goes the weak system sagging across the area ridge, dominating the weather here. Both the European and the GFS show that occurring all the way into next week. They start to bring another frontal system here as we go on in towards this is about next Wednesday. And in fact, I'm going to do something here really quick so you don't have to see the right screen flashing too much. We're going to do this and we're going to switch that up. Now, there's that system coming in next Wednesday. And then you can see that we do have some Arctic air here across Alaska, Northwest Territories, and the Yukon. And the GFS, again, is here on the right. You can see the system's moving in pretty good model agreement all the way to hour 200 with some kind of a system moving into the west coast there, and some very cool air starting to sag south. The European shows it here, the GFS shows it there. But I'm telling you, the 12Z GFS would be tons of fun. But again, you're looking 240 hours out. That's 10 days out. But the good news is that both models do show some Arctic air on the move out there. So this is probably the highest confidence that we have yet that some kind of cooler air is going to move into the region. And you can kind of see this. If one of these lows takes a favorable track, even on the European, that could bring some lower elevation snowfall. But again, the GFS, the 12Z, just really parks a lot of Arctic air across Western Canada. This would be leaking out in the Pacific Northwest. This would be an extremely fun event for lowland snow level lovers there. But it is purely fantasy still at this point. And the good news is, though, we still continue to be active as we go on through the extended forecast. The European has potential for some lower elevation snowfall as well. And there's even windstorm potential in there. Heck, why not? So if we take a look at the GFS, the 12Z, I'm just going to kind of show you the visual diagram of the upper temperatures at 10,000 feet or 700 millibars. You can see this trough get carved out across Southern California. That's their precipitation maker. But look at this ridge just dominating us as we remain nice and clear until that next frontal system there as we go through Wednesday night into Thursday. Then you can see the Arctic air, the polar lobe, as I like to call it, just launching down across Canada. This would be such a glorious setup. Man, it would get the hype machine rolling here across Pacific Northwest if we do get a setup like that. So let's root Team GFS. And the European shows something similar here as well. So let's hope this pattern finally catches on. We've been just having these episodes of Lucy holding the football out there and Charlie Brown coming up and trying to kick it and pull it away. But granted, not all the models have been in alignment like this with the previous attempts. So if we take a look at the GFS ensemble mean here, this is all 30 members, and this is 500 millibars. You see the ridge that's going to be dominating our weather as we go on into early next week, cutoff low for California, and then we start to bring that pattern change. And you can see the GFS, kind of some decent model agreement there, or ensemble agreement, and that's where you want to see that ridge, though. That's very important. And you start to bring that northerly and the northwest flow and allow for some of that colder air to bulk up here across Western Canada and potentially include the Pacific Northwest. And it's really not that far out there, I mean, relatively speaking. So we do have some confidence in this pattern change coming up, but you just come into play, or you get towards the period where you're going to be like, okay, are these westerlies just going to be phasing in too much, and that Arctic air is going to remain bottled up, and we're going to be getting more warm, moist flow here and windstorm potential, or is that Arctic air going to get a bit further south and the storm track will remain a little further south, and we'll get some better lower elevation snowfall? We'll have to just wait and see on that. So here's the 6 to 10 day below normal here across some of the west coast and the southwest. 6 to 10 day, you can see they're starting to bring that above average here back across some of the Pacific Northwest. 8 to 14 day, kind of a mixed bag across the west, and the above average signals we go through February 5th. And something interesting here, they're starting to pay attention to the experimental product with the kind of the storm train returning. Slight risk for some heavy snow. You can see the Rocky Mountains included, Cascades of Washington, Oregon. That would include British Columbia as well. And just a reminder, this was the monthly temperature outlook for February back on January 16th, and the above average precipitation. Also, Avalanche Canada, check before you go, and avalanche.org here for the Pacific Northwest. You can see that we are not too bad right now, but always check before you go. Lots of good information in there for you. So anyway, I'll get this video out now. Click like and subscribe. We'll do this all again tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys then.